You're listening to Heritage Radio Network.
Hey listeners, it's Taylor. I am here today with one of our story reporters, Jessie Nicely, and we're going to switch some things up a little bit. As many of you probably know, and as we've alluded to in previous episodes of Meet and Three in this season, the LA wildfires happened, and they were not happening in isolation. We had two reporters who are LA-based who were not only working with us, but also working with relief efforts in their respective communities. And as this all was unfolding and we were getting updates in real time, it dawned on us that we have a platform and the ability to connect the dots between what's going on in the world, what's going on with us, and what's going on with food. So what you're going to hear today is Jessie and I talking about what it was like to be alive in this really complicated, but not quite as complicated as you might imagine, scenario, and how relief efforts impacted both Jessie's community and community members and our other LA-based reporter, Kiki Canuto, her community as well. So Jessie, hi.
Hi. Thank you for that wonderful introduction.
My pleasure. I'm happy that you're here. I'm really grateful that we were able to find a way to be responsive and have the ability to respond, as we talk about a lot in production, and give a bit of not only context, but real life, real people texture to these headlines that, as someone who is not living in LA, someone who's living outside of the US, it was wild to see just how zoomed out some of these headlines really were and how zoomed in talking to you felt. And so I'm excited, if that's appropriate, I'm excited to actually bring these conversations and some of your experiences to our listeners, because this was a huge impact on your ability to be with us in the storytelling community. And obviously, as we've talked about on episodes, the relief efforts are still ongoing. And so hopefully this can give listeners an opportunity to tap in and support, or at least just have a better idea of what's been going on. So, yeah. Do you want to add anything before I ask you 100 questions?
Sure. I can contextualize this, I think, a bit so people know where I'm coming from too. I'm a native Californian. I grew up here. I lived in the Bay Area for most of my life. And so there were always fires, but they were always far away. And it was something that I always, saw on TV, and it was awful. But this was like a real reality check, I think, for the state of just nature and the environment and climate change in California. And it was one of the wildest things I think I've ever experienced.
Yeah. Witnessing from afar, obviously your Google Meet, your Zoom box remained unchanged, but it was so obvious that everything around you was changing. And every single week we would check in during that specific period of time at the beginning of the year was, okay, well, Jessie's here. Great. Jessie's house is still here. Great. What's next? How can we, as a completely fully remote community, be there for you to support? And so I found it really challenging to not just pack everything up and come to LA and be like, what do y'all need? What do you need me to do? Where can my hands? What can I do? But what was very interesting was hearing how quickly you mobilized. And what I'm recalling, that came from this feeling of isolation. There was a sense that this level of catastrophe, this level of crisis mirrored COVID and the coronavirus crisis in a way. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that's really accurate, because it was sort of this slow rollout too, if that makes sense, where we had warnings a couple days before. I live in Pasadena, just a couple miles south of Altadena, on the other side of the 210, for anyone who knows LA, and that's kind of like a fire line, which we'll come back to. But there were warnings, of a historic windstorm coming, and everyone was just kind of prepared for an extreme weather event, but nothing of this scale. And so the wind really picked up that evening, and Eric and I even went outside to be like, this is crazy. Like, I've never been in wind like this before. And then the smoke started rolling in, and my cousin called saying she could see a fire from her apartment. And, the Palisades at that point had already burned down, but no one had really knew the scope of it either, because it was so windy. News helicopters couldn't go, like nothing could go in the air. So there was no aerial anything on the news or anything to see really what the full scope of what was happening. So kind of similar to COVID, you're like, we're just going to hunker down for a day or two with the wind. We're going to have to clean some stuff. Maybe the power will go out. It's no big deal. And then by Wednesday, this happened Tuesday night, Wednesday, Altadena was still on fire. Ash was raining down. The extreme jump in like, it's going to be kind of windy to there's a fire to an entire city. Yeah, basically an entire city is burned down. We can't go outside without masks. It was so sudden and it was so horrifying and isolating because, we're texting people to be like, where are you? Do you need anything? But everyone's in their own personal crisis too. Like my friends who had to evacuate were all over the place. And it's like, I want to help them, but I don't want to be a nuisance either. Like it was the fine line of like, how do we help without getting in people's way? Because it was so horrifying just sitting at home and watching the news. Like for whatever reason, the thing that fully like pushed me over the edge was watching our Aldi burn down live on the news. They were just out there filming it and like there were no fire. Everything was just so overwhelmed that there were just news crews all over the city filming stuff burning down and being like, there's no way, there's no one here to stop it. And I had to tell myself, like, I can't just sit here and keep watching this because it's just going to lead me to spiral. And also, like, I think there's things that I can be doing. And that's what kind of led everyone, I think, in LA to mobilize.
So you mobilized then?
Honestly, it was a little overwhelming being like, what should we do? Because my husband works at a restaurant. So we took some food to donate at sites. But I think everyone was like, what do we do? Just people need stuff and started just donating stuff and food and everything. That a lot of places got a little overwhelmed. So my mom works for the Department of Education of California. And she told me about a school here in Pasadena that was doing food drop-offs because all the schools were closed. A bunch of schools burned down. So the district was just like, stop, don't know what to do. Our students are displaced, our teachers are displaced, but such a huge amount of kids, like some of them, their only reliable meal is at school. So the schools were still mobilizing, doing food drops. So I went up there every morning for a couple of weeks, for a couple hours in the morning to give out breakfast and lunch. And we were giving it out for the whole family. It wasn't just for the kids. We had cases of water. There were groups that came and gave away like boxes of food from food banks. And it kind of was like a slow roll where it was first just us from the school and volunteers like handing out food. And then groups came that started bringing other like toiletries. There were even like people that brought books and toys for the kids. And it was really sweet just to have like see a kid roll up and their teacher be able to be like, how are you? And like check in with them. And it was so like, I think being able to give them a little like sense of normalcy and food was really nice for the teachers and for the students. But I think just seeing how much the community wanted to support was really nice. I mean, all of LA, everybody just wanted to help. That was just the immediate reaction, which was very like, the vibe is bad in this country a lot of the time.
I say that again. Yeah.
Seeing so many people, like it was a horrific thing. It's still a horrific thing, but like people really genuinely care about each other and wanted to help. And I think that was like a one nice thing to come away with.
Yeah, that I remember as you were giving us the reports of, oh, this is what we did at the school today. Here's some photos, like seeing also on Instagram. I'm not super connected in LA, but I pay attention to food out there. But to see people report out to the rest of us that there are free stores and there are people who are creating this map of reciprocity across LA, across the different communities. And every community was like, I got this, you got this, let's do this. You need this, come here, it's yours. It was so beautiful to see that emerge from this horrible crisis. And I remember us talking as a group of like, how is it that these things are only possible on our level? Why are these things not possible federally sponsored, state sponsored? Why do we pay so much money in taxes and then we still have to have each other's back? That was the thing that like incensed me. And the thing that brought me back down to earth was like, oh, there's so much more of us than them. There's so much more goodwill than what is happening in our administration, and to be able to, in the words of Robin Wall Kimmerer, activate the service-berry economy, activate this reciprocal network of care. And like, it just was the thing to do. It was what was necessary. To see that come out of this was amazing. And I think also radicalized a lot of people. I was paying attention to on food media of like, hey, there is a different way to do this. We can think about this differently. We all have skills. We all have this ability. We all have certain resources. I mean, it's the same. It's a nicer picture or a nicer version of the GoFundMe economy. Like, people want to care about people, despite what headlines say. So
I think part of restaurants and food industry people to a specific ability to jump into action is we already had practice from COVID, where it was like, our industry has been abandoned. Most of the people here in the state have been abandoned. Like, the only way we're going to make it through is by doing things for each other together. So I think that, again, that experience really prepared people to jump into action and to be ready to just take care of each other, because, yeah, we couldn't rely on anyone else to come through. I mean, that's literally my friend's house, Sharon, who I'm going to share tape with later. We think her house survived because people from the neighborhood went up and started putting out fires, and specifically were putting out fires on her block and helped someone who stayed behind. So it's like, there weren't even enough firefighters to go up. So people were going and risking their lives and their help to go into neighborhoods they didn't even live in to try to put out fires and save other people's houses. It makes me emotional.
I have full body chills thinking about, like, it's so bleak. The news is so bleak. Living abroad, living away from America, being American, it is so, I have to keep reminding myself, and I have to remind the people around me too, that everybody in the United States, regardless of your religion, all wants the same things. We have just been subjugated into believing that we are against each other, when at the end of the day, our human instinct in these situations is to care for each other, is to risk our well-being in order to preserve those who are also in our community or on the edges of, or, our communities overlap in whatever way. And it is remarkable that there are so many stories of these things, and yet public policy just doesn't change. It is so corny and outdated, because we are in the year 2025, and I'm scare quoting for those of you not watching, because you're not. We're in the post-COVID era of existing and interacting with each other. And I mean, there's two sides of this. People in hospitality, I think I share this sentiment of, we hoped that, being perceived as an essential worker would have meant that people came back into hospitable places and back into restaurants and back into food spaces with a greater sense of care as a customer. No. Jessie's smiling and laughing at me. No. That didn't happen. But what did happen was this, oh, we're ready. Like you were saying before. Okay, we got this. We got each other because nobody else does. And by nobody else, I mean, I'm also scare quoting, I mean our governments and the people who are meant to take care of us in a legal way. And so I say all of that to say that it really was amazing to be able to support you from afar in our little community as you stepped into a space of action from this like intense, just deep feelings of like, oh my God, this is actually happening. This is your home. This is where you grew up. But to be able to witness you in a form that you're able to hold and be held by your community at the same time was really awesome. And speaking of your community, you spoke with Sharon, who
does pop-ups and is a lawyer, immigration lawyer. So a lot of things.
Doing the Lord's work in so many different ways.
Yeah, we actually moved to LA around the same time and met through the magazine I used to run with my cousin. She wrote for us for Compound Butter. So it was like a really nice relationship to have with food and writing. And Sharon did live in Altadena and was directly affected by the fires. So I really wanted to talk with her, because I think the other thing about this is, I guess it's not a crisis anymore in the active sense, for everyone. Like, the fires are out, what's done is done. But everyone that was affected is going to be ongoing for months to years to, forever, in at least kind of the mental way. So I wanted to hear more just about what her current experience is and what that looks like now that I think a lot of people that weren't affected have moved on, what's still happening in the area.
Yeah, the way that the news cycle and our attention economy just is so ready to be outraged and then immediately unfazed is sickening. Not in the cutie drag race sense, but in the like, that is physically making me ill. And I know that you and I talked about this of it kind of was, I would say, neutrally serendipitous that the story slate of Meat and Three was so closely linked to your experience being in LA, and life imitates art, art imitates life, and for you to be able to pivot in some of your storytelling from previous episodes to this one, but in our season, to be able to continue to tell that story of, hey, y'all might have forgotten. We didn't, because as everybody experiences in the world, something happens in your community, it continues to have legacy in your body, how you eat, how you navigate a space. And I think you did a really elegant and intentional job of weaving the reality of life after a crisis, in quotes, into our storytelling at Meat and Three. So with that all being said, I would like to hear more about your community and more about Sharon.
My name is Sharon. I am a lawyer, and I also cook and write about food sometimes. And I lived in Altadena on El Molino down near Woodbury, so kind of at the border of the fire line.
So I think one thing that's been really hard for people to visualize is how far into the city the fire came. Because like you were at the edge of the fire line, but I would say you were like pretty far from the mountains where everything started, right?
Yeah, so the fire actually started in Eaton Canyon. I happened to actually drive by when it started. And Eaton Canyon is much farther east of where I would say the large majority of the structures were burned. So it started, let's say, closer to Sierra Madre, if people are familiar with that. And then the wind just sort of carried it over into West Altadena. And from there, it really spread throughout the western part of the town and sort of even south to an area which would include us, where we would never consider that we would be in a fire danger zone.
I think that's the wildest thing. Driving up to other parts of Altadena that are farther west than you, like closer to where the fire started and pretty far north. In my mind, I was like, if it made it all the way to Sharon's house, that stuff's gone.
Everything's toasted.
Yeah. It's so wild, the kind of randomness of what got hit and what didn't.
Yeah, very random. And like, if you look at the fire map near where we live, it almost looks like the fire, like there was like a bay or like a hug. It's like a circle, and we're just happened to be in that circle by a house, basically, like directly across and diagonal from us are gone. So yeah. I'm definitely intrigued by that randomness after having been through this experience.
I think something too that's interesting is when I first saw that your house survived, it was like, oh, amazing. Like this is like a miracle situation for them. Can you tell me about what the reality of that is?
Yeah, it's a nightmare. I think, whatever bucket you fell in at the end of this, it's your own personal nightmare. So if you're a renter and you have a different experience than an owner. If your house survived in part, or let's say more than 50%, that's a different experience than someone who maybe lost. Obviously, there's total loss, and then people who lost like the majority, which are all categorized by the government. For us, we're still not home and probably won't be home. My guess is the end of the year. There's smoke remediation. There's lead in the house that was found, and other debris. So for us personally, yeah, it's a full-time job just dealing with the insurance and trying to get our house interior and exterior healthy again. So people in the bucket that we're in, that's the experience that we're having.
I saw that you posted about having to get rid of your plants. So is it just the entire outside you're going to have to clear the soil?
Yeah, I don't know yet because there's different guidance basically on, if you had a total loss, then the government will be digging at least, I think it's 6 inches off your topsoil. And then they just announced that they'll keep testing until it's clean. For us, I don't think we have that option. I think we are going to sign up for a test to test the soil because we've only done interior tests right now. But, there's lead inside the house. So I can't imagine that there's not lead on the outside.
Yeah.
Everything that was outside came inside. But yeah, it's certainly not healthy to be eating the kale that I had that somehow survived.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like, again, like obviously your house survived and that's good. But then it kind of feels like a lot of it has just fallen on you to figure out now. Whereas people who had a total loss, yeah, it's like if the government is replacing 6 inches of topsoil for a house like 20 feet away from you, why would yours be any better?
Yeah, I think, I've learned a lot throughout this experience about the differences between, and it's also very case by case, like one of our neighbors lost a garage, for example, an exterior structure. And so that completely changes how they have to approach the situation compared to us, compared to another neighbor whose windows were not very tight, who had a lot of debris inside. So that's what I mean. Like whatever bucket you fell in, it just sucks.
Yeah.
You're kind of in a nightmare no matter what you lost. It's just a different kind of nightmare, because like I said, I didn't lose my stuff.
Yeah.
And I feel thankful for that. And I feel thankful that we have a home that already was historic, but is now hyper historic because our house is from the 20s, and I'm glad we're able to preserve that. But yeah, I'll be doing new plants.
Altadena was full of really historic structures, and beyond just the buildings, I mean, I think there was such a rich community there. And I know you lived near some places that were really special to you. Do you want to talk about that situation a little bit? If it's not too much.
No, it's okay. Yeah, the hardware store was awesome. And, again, I do want to preface the conversation with I didn't grow up in Altadena. I haven't been there for, a decade or more. But even for the time that I thankfully was there, I think the two places that stick out to me the most that were lost would be the hardware store. We would always go up there. We're always doing house things. It was always just like, go to the hardware store, and they're so friendly, and you see the same people, and they're so helpful, and most of them live in the area. It was just a really lovely spot. Rancho, the bar, was such a meaningful spot to us. We just really loved it and had so many good conversations with people from the neighborhood there, and really got to learn a lot about Altadena from people that were there, because we would often go around 6 and sit on the patio, and you see the same people there all the time or meet new people. And yeah, I'll really miss Ranchos.
So you aren't going to be able to go home for potentially almost a year. So kind of what is your situation right now?
Yeah, we stayed at my in-laws for a while and then sort of couch surfed. Now we finally got a rental, like a temporary rental set up, which is even like we're in a temporary one spot, and then we're moving to another spot in a month. So that's also a little challenging at times and a little frustrating.
I'm glad you're back in the city and everything, so we can hang out and try to support. But I think being close but far away too would kind of drive me crazy a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think the takeaway from this experience, there's many, but I don't want it to become my identity. It's obviously a terrible thing to have lived through, but it's not always like we're sad and depressed 24/7. It's just really hard. And but it also presents an opportunity, right, to not do what you were planning on doing, to sort of change course. And it doesn't have to mean a 180. It can just be, right now it was a little hard to not be in LA, but it also forced me, I think, in a good way, to pause and not just jump right back in, not to just try to put my life back in the way it was on January 7th or January 6th. There is a way to see a silver lining and opportunity and not just try to run back into what we were doing, because I think for anyone right now, life feels hard and the sustainability element of it can be challenging. And so being forced to take a step back and reconsider how you want to approach that is something that I am trying to welcome.
What
Yeah,
do you, I know you can't speak for everyone, obviously, but I think for like
sure.
yourself and maybe your kind of immediate community of other people who are affected, what do you think things are that people outside of this can do to help besides, paying attention? I think a lot of people are already like, what? But like,
Yeah,
what does like long-term support look like?
I don't know. It's hard to say. I think probably like if you know someone affected, just checking in, and it doesn't have to be something dramatic, but just checking in. I don't need it to become so all-encompassing that it becomes my life, but I think it is helpful just, again, yourself included, all my close friends check in, and I appreciate that, and it's meaningful. And it's like, okay, I feel supported. I have my community. I have my women on my block, and that feels like supported. I don't feel isolated in that way. So it doesn't even matter where I'm located. So just speaking for myself, that feels good for me, and I know it feels good for us and like what we need to do for the house. And I think that would extend even beyond the fires, just to like
Yeah,
the time of now of just checking in with people and being kind.
that's true. Well, I'm glad you're back. Thank you so much for chatting.
Of course.
Appreciate your time. Glad to hear
Anytime.
you're hanging in there.
My pleasure.
Yeah,
Thanks for all of your support. It's really meaningful.
it's my pleasure, dude.
It was really beautiful to hear your conversation with Sharon, and just to echo the thoughts around being delightfully surprised. That is so corny to say, but to be reminded of the goodness of humanity and how we really are oriented around our communities, throw it around social media and stuff. We're tribal people. We're we're not meant to know more than 200 people. Like it really is. So it comes back up in these horrible situations. Similar thing happened in COVID where the people around us were directly able to respond. And it is an amazing reminder that our worlds, however big they become because of social media, because of also the ability to be remote and have these conversations, like it's 7:30 p.m. for me, and it's, what time is it in LA?
11:30 in the morning. Yeah.
Yeah, like we are across literal time and space having this conversation about community, and we are in a community that we've been cultivating for the last 7 months together, that the natural way for us to be is together and there for each other. And so to be able to hear you in conversation with someone in your community, reflecting that back out, that these horrible things happen, but to be reminded of these very clear, crystalline things about us as people and as humans on this planet was amazing. And I would like everyone to be reminded the purpose of this episode is these things are ongoing. Yes, it's amazing to see people be reactive. These communities still need support. So there will be a little bit more information in our show notes about relief efforts, some more info of how to also keep up with Sharon. But I want to hear how you feel about this conversation and if there are any updates before we actually pivot to Kiki's storytelling, which Jessie and I are going to talk a bit more about, share an interview that Kiki did with someone that she met through her relief efforts. How do you feel? How are you doing?
I feel like I'm glad that I can do something for my friends and my community and the people affected. It's very much something that's still at the forefront of all of our minds. It's just, I go to my favorite grocery store and the houses right next door burned down. It's just a thing that's unavoidable in our neighborhood right now, in our city. So I just want to make sure people don't forget. And it's really easy to see the map or the videos and be overwhelmed by how much has happened. So I just want people to be able to zoom in and see the very individual aspects of what's happened and is happening. So I hope that that's helpful for people to hear.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Okay, we are going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with a little bit more storytelling and mutual aid. Welcome back to Meat and Three. I'm still here with Jessie, and although we're finished hearing from Sharon, obviously relief efforts are ongoing, so make sure you head over to our show notes to keep up with Sharon on Instagram. Next, we're going to hear from Kiki Canuto. Kiki actually interviewed Andrew Marco, who she met through volunteering with the World Central Kitchen in her community. But first, Jessie, I just wanted to talk with you about some of the points that Andrew made about connecting to others and people and doing the hard thing. I think between the two of us, in having a listen and a look through this tape, that was the thing that stuck out as so important to remind ourselves and to remind listeners of the goodness of people, and that doing hard things is really important. Community is not convenience. Community is holding people accountable. It's going out of your way to help people when you can. And even when you can't, making sure you communicate that to folks. And reflecting on our Meat and Three community and having our community be international. I'm here in Holland and y'all are across the US. We did a lot of hard things. And I think also being the keeper of the community, it was so difficult to have these hard conversations, or these come to Jesus calls, as I would come to call them. But to do hard things together created this trust, I think, in my gut as well, in my instinct, in my ability to trust in others and trust in my own capacity to show up for the people around me. It created this commonality that we did this thing that was difficult together, having this fellowship happen over the holidays during an election year with all of these extreme weather events, doing it in a remote digital environment. I'm not equating this to experiencing wildfires ravaging your home, but the hard things are where the connection actually exists. And I was wondering if you had any thoughts on that.
Definitely. I mean, I think especially in the context of this tape, when Andrew was talking about the survival of the food industry, it's like there's so many parts of our lives and our society that relies on people making the effort for each other, or even for yourselves, honestly. Like going out to eat, even alone, it can feel like a treat, but it is work still, right? And I think there's so much work to be done all the time, and I know that can feel really exhausting, and corporations have made it very easy here to not do any of that and to grow very distant.
Thank you for that distinction.
Yeah, there's very specific things in motion to separate and isolate us. And I think that it's funny kind of to think about the idea of going out to dinner as hard or as work, but it is like you said, community doesn't just happen. Like there's so much that we need to put in to get things back. But when you do that, it's so rewarding. And I think the food industry exists to serve people and to connect people. And it's all so precarious all the time. It was really hard for restaurants after the fire here in LA, but it was already hard. LA, California, the world is in a constant state of crisis. We had COVID, and then we had the industry strikes, and now we have the fires. And it's like, even in spite of all of that, and like how close every restaurant is constantly to shutting down, the first people to mobilize so often when things do happen here, or when anyone needs anything, is restaurants, is food industry people. Like watching how quickly everyone was ready to feed people, to provide people, to open up their space to people in need. It made me really proud of our food industry, and it inspired me to be like, yes, I need to be doing things too. I need to be helping these restaurants. I need to be helping my community. I'm so happy that a lot of these places have reopened now, but are still doing so much, even when they don't really have anything to give,
Yeah. As someone who's been in and out of hospitality basically my entire adult life, I started in my teens as a coffee girl at our local bakery before I decorated cakes and worked in the deli. The best people on the planet work in hospitality, and also the worst. But that's a product of the industry constantly being in crisis, constantly being manipulated by the public perception of what it means to be in service of others. This is a completely different pod to talk about this. But to your point about hearing in this tape and experiencing it too, the hospitality industry is constantly in crisis. And that is a reality that we all experience, people who are in the industry. At the same time, because we're always in crisis, we know how to respond. We know how to be there for each other. The hospitality industry is so isolated. Like, we eat dinner at 4 p.m. and then again at 2 a.m. So shout out to Second Dinner, holding everybody down. But it means that we know what it feels like to do what you can with what you have. The ability to innovate is crazy. I don't know about y'all, but every single person I know in hospitality has had to do and make a quick decision in order to be the best version of themselves for the customer and for their team members. And so we talk about resilience and da-da-da-da, but like the hospitality industry, especially post-COVID, is easily the most resilient group of people. Outside of, the hospital workers and teachers, like people in service, that is hospitality. Anybody working in healthcare, anybody working in education, anybody working in restaurants, the food industry, beverage industry as well. We are all in service and we know what it means in our core. Even if we've been abused or in toxic environments, we know what it feels like to be in service of others and how it feels to receive that, because we have to take care of each other and we do it regularly.
Yeah.
Because people don't get paid correctly. Yeah. I had to whisper it instead of screaming it.
Yeah.
But
yeah. No, exactly. I mean,
yeah,
we have to learn how to take care of people, and in a lot of ways before ourselves, and that I think comes out a lot too in Andrew's tape when he talks about how they wanted to balance making their customers feel safe, making their employees feel safe, while also still having to worry about a bottom line, like keeping their doors open. It's such a fine balance.
It is a fine balance. It's a really tenuous balance that is so frustrating to watch the evolution of the food industry over the last few years. And we've talked about this as a community as well at Beaten 3 of people are trying to do the right thing, and there's a cult of celebrity chef, there's a cult of hospitality, there's limitations that are placed on the industry, there's the abuse that's intergenerational at this point. It's just this traumatic machine that people get sucked into. There are so many truths that exist within the hospitality industry that exist within being in service to people and being in community. You have to hold multiple truths. You have to be able to have this double consciousness of, I'm in service of others, the customer's always right, and the customer's always wrong. And that is just the nature of hospitality. But I say that to say, it comes back to the point of this episode. There are beautiful things that came out of this awful, awful thing that happened to so many people. And it's still effing awful. It is still terrible to have to experience such tragedy in order for us to be confronted with the goodness of people and the badness of people at the same time. You have the water barons, and you have the energy companies, and you have the architects and the people who decided to build homes for low-income folks or for communities of color in these areas that notoriously are dangerous. And so we're in the multiverse. It's everything everywhere all at once. But I say all of this to say that we are going to hear more about Andrew's experience as a food person, as a restaurateur, and the reality of the wildfires for his team and his space and for himself. And we'll hear a little bit from Kiki Canuto as well. And you'll hear from us later.
Hey everyone, it's Kiki Canuto. And boy, has it been a year. 2025 has been a year. Getting to be in LA during the wildfires was a really just overwhelming and trying time for so many people. And I really think it helped bring the community together. Despite all of the destruction and the devastation that people had suffered, I feel like the wildfires really brought the community together overall, and people were able to bond over food and just creating new memories together. And I got to do that with a volunteer opportunity with World Central Kitchen. I worked with a chef who was running a community cooking and drop-off center through Chef Balo Orozco, and I met a great and fabulous chef there. I met Chef Andrew Marco of Open Market, and I got to chat with him a little bit more about his experience with the LA wildfires.
We don't want to pressure anybody who doesn't feel safe to go out and have to support our restaurant. But then us as a restaurant and owners, it's a lot of our employees need money. They need hours, they need to get paid. And it was at least very important that we supported our team, because that's the only people that we could really support in that immediate thing with our restaurant. We're in Koreatown. We're quite far from a lot of the affected areas. So we did, hop on, do the thing that all the restaurants did, which is offer as much as they could, with food and everything. And I would say that the customers it really took a dip. January was a really rough financial month, but at the end of the day, everyone has started slowly come back. And it's making me feel a little less and I feel us supporting our team was the best thing that we could have done at that time, and making sure that they get their hours, even if we were making $1,000 a day, which is not even enough to cover the payroll, And so it's okay. It's feeling better again, but it was a weird time when the fires hit, because our entire restaurant had nothing but ash. Some of our employees decided to drive elsewhere because they're a little bit more health conscious and health affected by the situation. And so some people are I can't come in at all. Some people are I would like hours, so can I come in? So it's just having open conversations with your staff and figuring out the best way to do it. But yeah, it's really hard to know what was right and wrong. What's the wrong thing to do? Is it not sensitive to open back up the restaurant, it's and then now you're yeah, it was actually good that you opened up, but at that time you're are we being insensitive? Ralph actually had a contact with, I believe, someone who had a little bit more funding, and so through that funding we actually connected them with other friends of ours who are doing a lot of community organizing. They were doing an insane amount of organizing. And so for us, when we got contacted to hey, we can give you a little bit of funding for XYZ budget. Can we give it to you? And then you guys can then donate the food. And we're of course, you know what I mean? We'll take whatever we can get. And it's kind of a double whammy. It helps us, pay our staff and some of our costs, but also this food is going, somewhere where people need it. I feel that point in time, really got me thinking a lot about the restaurant industry and how it's going to be or how it's affected. Because at that time, everyone knows wintertime, it's really slow. So you hear a lot about restaurants burning down, but now you're also hearing about restaurant closures at the same time. So that to me is this weird signal of oh, are people eating out anymore? Are people dining out? Are people going to restaurants? A lot of the friends that we talked to who are in our circle, they're oh, revenue's down 50%, reservations down 30, 40, 50% as well. They're having to cut shifts. So at that point in time, it kind of felt very apocalypse. And I sometimes feel when larger events like this happen, there's an aftermath to it. It's hard to know if that's going to be the reality or if it's going to pass. And things luckily have gone back to normal. And I think at the end of the day, and what I'm still very hopeful for, but still a little bit pessimistic about, is I do think people still want to connect with others. I think people still do want to go out. I think people still want to get out of their home, say hi, interact with people. And I feel like restaurants are like the last space for that. I feel like being individual and being like lonely now, it's going to become easier and easier. And I feel like that in conjunction with the fires was making me feel a certain way about restaurants. Like, do people even want to do this anymore? And I'm not even mad at it because human beings like things that are easier. But on the flip side, the beauty of being a human is going through the things that are hard, right? Like going out to get, groceries compared to ordering it online is hard. But like getting groceries is kind of nice. You get to see people's faces. You get to hang out. Going out to a restaurant and having to drive through LA traffic. It's hard for me to like meet with friends on the West Side. You know what I mean? Like it's difficult, but like the difficulty is the beauty of it. And I'm hoping that in a general sense, people will realize that hard isn't necessarily a bad thing. And I feel like the only space that's still like that is like trying to bring people together, trying to have people have conversations. Hopefully they're not on their phones. They're just enjoying their time. The last spaces that we really have are like restaurants, bars,
It's pretty odd sometimes to hear yourself in tape, to be in this like temporal relationship with post-produced podcasts and the way that we're kind of breaking form in order to be able to have this conversation to get it out to the airwaves. It felt, when we were talking about this, I remember us being like, hey, I don't know if we need to polish this so fiercely. I think it makes most sense to have you actually in conversation with your friend, have Kiki in conversation with this new person that she is now in community with, and me and you be in conversation with each other, not scripted, but having an intentional conversation about what all of this has meant and the process behind this, because not a lot of listeners understand or are able to really glean. I hope that they can, because we are very intentional with how we put our episodes together. There's so much work that goes into it, but we have created a very tight-knit community. I don't even know if any of y'all have legs. I've only met a few of you in person. I've met H in person. I've worked with H for a while. I have not met even Sam in person. I've worked with him for over a year, our engineer. And I just think it's remarkable that you were able to be so responsive to our community and also to your community and at the same time. So I thank you for joining me today for this episode and for bringing this to Meet and Three and being brave enough to do it in a way that breaks format, that puts you on the spot, on the pod, co-hosting with me, and for doing all of this work in service of others. It's really awesome.
It's my pleasure, dude. We don't have to do that. I just had to.
The pleasure's all mine, dude.
I can be for real.
We're leaving this in.
Oh, great.
I'm just playing.
I'm just really grateful for this platform and the community and just all the support that I've received, from Meet and Three and from just everyone around me, and have been able to give to other people during some of the like wildest things I've ever had happen consecutively in my life.
It's been a chunky half year for you, yes.
A wild ride. So I'm just really glad that we've had each other and that we can kind of share this with our listeners. So thank you, Meet and Three.
Thank you, Jessie. Meet and Three listeners, you know what to do. The show notes are full of resources, information, everything you need to know in order to be able to stay in touch with Jessie, with Sharon, with Andrew, with Kiki, and stay up to date on how to support us, because we're in community. Y'all are our community too. And we are so grateful that time and time again, we are able to have a listenership that feels like y'all are really part of this too. This has been really cool to know that these stories will land in very soft places and be received well. So I'm going to wrap this up. Sam, cue the credits, cue the theme music, and we will catch you on the next one. Bye.